Thank you, Sasha, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. Uh, I think it's been one of the craziest weeks that I can certainly remember, and we're grateful to have so many of you who are here and who we know care so deeply about this. We're going to start our conversation with a panel about what we're seeing on campus and what you can do about it. And then later in the hour, we're going to be joined by Jonathan Greenblatt, CEO of ADL, and we will also have an opportunity for question and answer. You can just pop those in the chat as you go, and we are taking a look at them and making sure that we're tracking them all. And with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Please welcome Columbia University Assistant Professor Shai Davidai, who has been a notable voice in speaking out about Israel and about Jewish student safety on campus. We also have the president of Georgia Tech Hillel, student Talia Segal. Talia is also a member of the Hillel International Israel Leadership Network. And last, but far from least, we have ADL's Senior Director for Advocacy, my colleague, Senior Director of Advocacy, Shira Goodman. All right, thank you all so much for being with us today. So I think first and foremost, we want to start with what it's feeling like on campus. So with that, Shai, Talia, I think you are going to be best positioned to answer those questions. Tell us a little, Talia, why don't you start? Tell us a little bit about what your experience has been like on campus, if there's been a change since October 7th, and maybe even what you're hearing from other friends and around the country at schools.
Definitely. First, thank you for having me here. I'm really honored. So Georgia Tech is an interesting place because it's really historically apolitical. Students are more focused on STEM than on politics. They're really more worried about doing their computer science homework. But this minority of people who really care about politics is growing louder and stronger. And frankly, Jewish students are scared. You've seen, I'm sure on the news, incidents of vandalism, rallies on campus, and we've had that here as well. Our AE Pi house was vandalized. There was a rally on the main green in the middle of campus where people were saying from the river to the sea. There are also, like, the Muslim Student Association is doing a bake sale, which is their way of helping the Palestinian people. But unfortunately, that's accompanied by them handing out flyers that are egregiously misinformed and frankly, I think dangerous. So it's definitely a difficult time.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I can't quite imagine what it would be like to be in college right now. Shai, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what it feels like from the professorial side and also what you're hearing from colleagues around the country.
So, I'm sorry, this is heavy on me. I wish I could talk with everyone one-on-one. Honestly, I can't for the sole reason that since October 7th, I've been on campus twice. I was once on campus to attend the Jewish students rally that was opposing the pro-Hamas protest on campus. And then a week later at an anti-terror vigil, which is where I spoke some words, and the video that has been seen by people around the world. I'm scared. Now, am I scared for my own personal physical safety? No, I'm a 40-year-old man. I can take care of myself, but I'm scared. I'm scared for the students who are experiencing anti-Semitism for maybe the first time in their life, such blatantly so. I am scared for the Israeli students that have joined our school maybe 2 months ago from Israel, and they now feel less safe in New York City than their families feel in Tel Aviv, in a war zone. I was planning to go to the office yesterday, and then I saw a letter signed by more than 100 Columbia professors calling what we saw, the massacre of October 7th, as a contextualized military response. And I saw two people that whose offices are in my building that have signed on to that letter. And all of a sudden I realized I could go into the office and stand in an elevator with someone who sees my kid's life as expendable, as less valuable, as justified their targeting. and I decided not to go. So I've been working from home. I'm still building up the courage to go to campus and just face these people. I've been face a lot of my colleagues who are amazing people, but are right now being silent because they're worried about offending someone. And it's been painful. It really, I mean, my heart has been broken 3 times this past month. On October 7th, on October 12th, when there was the pro-Hamas rally on campus, and yesterday morning when I saw the letter.
Yeah, I can't quite imagine what that must have felt like. I'm glad to hear that. Yes, please.
You know, it's you don't think you'd experience these kind of things in 2023, right? After October 7th, every time I closed my eyes to fall asleep, which I couldn't, I would see the image of one kidnapped baby, Kfir Bibis, who's still being held in Gaza. But after I saw the protest on campus, I no longer see that image. The image that I see in mind when I close my eyes is the image, a famous image from the Holocaust of a Jewish kid going like this, which I think a lot of us know that image, because I really do think that that's the logical conclusion of everything that's happening right now. That's where the train is going. And if we don't stop this train or completely derail it, we know where we'll end up. And some people might see it as being paranoid or hysterical, but we have to remember history has taught us, from the pogroms to the Holocaust, from the Farhud of Iraqi Jews, from the Inquisition, from the massacre of Jews in Tripoli. Like, we know how these things go. It never ends with one pogrom. And that's my concern.
And a reasonable one. So Talia, Shai walked us through a little bit about what his life is like right now, and specifically said that he does feel physically safe on campus, which at least is certainly something. Talk to us a little bit about how you're feeling on campus and what's influencing that, and maybe what you're hearing from your friends at other schools.
Yeah, I do thankfully feel physically safe. I'm very lucky that the Georgia Tech Police Department has been working with us closely. In fact, we had an event at the Jewish fraternity the other night as like a memorial. We read names, and the chief of police attended the event, and afterwards personally approached me to introduce himself and say, we're here, we want to make sure that you're safe. And so I really appreciate how seriously our safety is being taken, and I do physically feel safe. But, you know, as Shai said, it's these individual interactions that we're having with people that are particularly challenging, and that we feel betrayed by the people who are around us in our classes. I have a group project that I'm supposed to be working on with 2 girls who I saw attend the Free Palestine rally. And it's difficult, you know, I can skip lecture, I suppose, but I'll fall behind in class. So I don't know if that fully answers the question, but that's kind of the feeling. And thankfully, I am physically safe, I think.
May I jump in just one, because I
Please.
want to make so first of all, Talia, I'm so grateful that you feel safe, but we have to remember one thing. So long as we need even one police officer to protect us, we're not safe. The fact that we need police officers outside of every Jewish fraternity, outside of every synagogue, outside of every Hillel, the fact that, you know, that we have increased police presence shows that we're not safe, right? They are doing everything they can to protect us because the universities are not protecting us, because the leadership of the universities is failing to do so. So don't mistake our immediate sense of safety with Jews and Israelis on campus being safe, because we're not. That is why the police is there. So the causality has to be remembered.
It's extremely well said, Shai. Thank you for clarifying that point. I think it's a really good one. And Talia, I love it. And you know, you did share this with me yesterday when we spoke, but I just love that police chief took you seriously and came up to you and treated you like the concerned adult that you are. And I think that speaks really well for your community. And hopefully the university will continue to take note of such things. So I want to pivot a little bit and bring my colleague Shira into things. Shira, you know the question that everyone is asking, what can I do? What is there for me to do? What is ADL actually doing? Maybe you can shed some light on that for us.
Sure, and thank you for including me, Talia and Shai. Thank you for being here and sharing with us. So ADL and our campus partners have been focused on improving campus climate and ensuring students are safe and feel safe. As Talia said and Shai said, it's not just about being safe, but feeling safe. And there are many who unfortunately don't feel safe right now. Students, parents, and alumni are communicating their needs and expectations, and we need direct action by university leadership and by our elected officials. So ADL has been doing a few things over the course of the last few weeks. And in fact, our work on campus began before that. So just before the October 7th attacks, we had sent an open letter to campus asking universities to take 9 actions to fulfill their obligations under the White House strategy to counter anti-Semitism. We have continued to lift up that letter, and we are going to be putting that letter on our campus page of the ADL Stand With Israel website, so you can share it with your universities that you're affiliated with as well. As soon as the attacks happened, we reworked that letter, and our regions in all 25 offices sent the letter to universities that they're affiliated with, explaining what was happening, explaining that students would need support, that the rhetoric that we were seeing that Shai has been talking about is so dangerous, and that universities can, even, and I saw some questions in the chat, even in a world where First Amendment and academic freedom principles are so highly prioritized, can condemn those statements, can distance themselves from those statements, can make clear that those statements don't stand for university values. They also can make sure, unfortunately, as Shai pointed out, we need this, that the demonstrations are safe and secure, and that students are safe and secure. And that when that rhetoric crosses that line from protected speech to action, that they are taking action. We've asked them to work with campus partners like Hillel and Chabad on campus to talk to the Jewish fraternities and sororities and see what they need. We asked before this all happened for universities to create task forces with their Jewish students and Jewish faculty and alumni to deal with the climate on campus, to work with Hillel and their campus climate initiative. And some universities we're seeing are doing that now. And we asked them to think about their obligations under Title VI of the Civil Rights Law. So just let me, go into the legal stuff for 1 second, Deb, which is Title VI does protect us and protect students on campus, prohibiting discrimination on race, color, national origin. And not just for public universities, but it's for all activities or programs that receive federal assistance. So that includes the financial aid program, which means basically every university, even if they're not public. And discrimination here can mean unwelcome conduct based on a student's actual or perceived race, color, national origin, ethnicity, or ancestry. And this includes country or world religion, or where a person's ancestors come from. It includes harassment based on look or dress linked to ethnicity or ancestry. And the fact that harassment involves speech does not relieve a university of the burden to respond. Speech can create a hostile environment. Universities have a burden to respond, and the Office of Civil Rights of the Department of Education has complaints on this and takes complaints. And not just students, parents, alumni, others can file complaints. And one of the things we've been talking about with the Department of Education is dealing with their backlog of complaints, giving best practices to universities to address them, looking at what's happening, auditing what's happening, and not just ADL and our volunteers who have been tremendous in reaching out, but Congress has been doing this as well, calling on Department of Education and college campuses to take action. So last week, the Senate passed unanimously a bipartisan resolution. Thousands, tens of thousands of folks wrote to their senators to ask them to do that. And we've just heard, just before I signed on, that the House is going to take up a similar measure tonight. So I would ask, and we'll put this in the chat, if you want to contract your US representative to ask them to vote yes on this simple thing to condemn rising anti-Semitism on campus, please text the word campus to 72572. That's the word campus to 72572. You'll get a link, which will, if you click on it, and then fill out the form. We'll connect you right to your US representative. And we ask you to do this today because they're going to vote tonight around 6 o'clock.
Thank you for that. I think we're going to drop that in the chat for everyone in just a moment. And for those who are asking, yes, we are absolutely recording this, and it will be sent to you via email after we are completed here, along with links to everything that we talk about. So don't worry, we will make sure that you have everything that you need following this webinar. So Shira, those are some really great tactical things that ADL is doing. And I know that there's some other things too that we can get to in a minute. But I want to talk a little bit to Talia and Shai about what would make you personally, you a student, you a professor, feel supported by the community in this moment? Talia, why don't you go first?
Sure. I mean, I know for a lot of us, the worst part of this is just this feeling of helplessness, that there's not much that we can do to improve the situation. And so I hope that I can give you something to do, but it's difficult to find really one thing. I think having platforms like this where student voices are elevated is incredibly valuable to us. You know, we know our campus is best. We know what we're experiencing firsthand. And so being able to like feel that our voices are valuable is really something that I'm grateful for. Secondly, there are Jewish organizations on campus like Hillel and Chabad, which I really feel are supporting us sort of on the front lines, if you will. And, you know, not to sound like a walking advertisement for the two organizations, but really the work that they're doing to support students right now is invaluable. Another thing to do, which I think maybe Shai is more equipped to talk about, is holding administration accountable. I've been lucky to have the administration of Georgia Tech, you know, show up for us, come to our bagel break events and listen to us and really make us feel like we're supported, but not every administration is doing as good of a job at that. And so, you know, look at your alma mater and see what they've done and make sure that they are taking, you know, the right approaches to support their students. And the last thing I'll say is not to underestimate the value of personal interactions with your family members and friends. Knowing that we have community support is really invaluable. Today, we actually had about 50 members of the Atlanta community come to Georgia Tech's campus and just walk with us into the middle of campus and then walk to class with us. And this happened all across the state of Georgia at other campuses. It was organized by Hillels of Georgia. And so just like knowing that the community support is there for us and that they see our pain and our struggle, you know, it's really good to know that we have community.
I can only imagine how much community means in this moment when you're physically on a campus. So I want to address the elephant in the room. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad you're here.
Are you calling me an elephant?
You know, I call him like I see him.
Because I'm very uncomfortable with that characterization.
I'm sorry, Jonathan. I'm sorry.
I'm glad to see that I froze at the worst possible time.
You did. It's kind of funny. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, that's great.
There we go.
So first of all, can I just say how much I appreciated Talia's words a few minutes ago and what a privilege it is for me to be on with Professor Davidai from Columbia, who's like that piece that you did. And we could talk about Harry Potter later, but like your remarks were so strong and so needed. I think I just really, really appreciate you and your willingness to speak truth to power. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. And you know, I think a lot of the video resonated with a lot of people because it wasn't strategic. It was just authentic. So
I think your audio is unfortunately breaking up a little. We're having trouble hearing you.
I feel supported. Can you hear me?
Oh, I think we hear you now.
Okay.
There we go.
I think we're okay. Sorry, I apologize. I don't need to feel supported. I don't need the university to support me. I reject the premise of the question. This is not about being supported. It's about being valued. I just need them to value my life. Right now, the fact that my own university and so many universities around the country have yet to condemn what Hamas did is a signal to everyone in the community that my life as an Israeli and as a Jew is just slightly less valuable than everyone else's life. The fact that the universities can write however fancy emails that they want about battling anti-Semitism, the fact that they're allowing student organizations to use their power and celebrate the Hamas, to me, that is the most egregious thing. It's not about being supported. I don't need to be supported. I have an amazing family that supports me. I have an amazing community that supports me. And in the last 2 weeks, I've been getting thousands of emails from people, probably some people here, that have been extremely supportive. I don't need the universities to support me. I don't think they should support us. They should just come out and say, Jewish lives are as valuable as everyone else's lives. And right now, they're not saying that. That to me is the most urgent thing. So what does that mean in practice? It means, one, naming the Hamas, because many of the university leaderships have yet to even use the word Hamas, even though the Hamas terrorists have taken full ownership. They are themselves saying that they did it, yet for some reason, Columbia University can't bring itself to say it. Two, once you condemn the Hamas for the vile act that they did, take concrete actions to remove any pro-terror organization from campus. And we should be clear. Every student should have the freedom to say and think whatever they want. But as an organization that is getting space and is getting a platform and a microphone from the university, we should say, no, this is where we draw the line. And I mentioned Harry Potter, Jonathan, thank you for reminding me, the reason why Harry Potter resonates with kids worldwide, and it doesn't matter who the kids are, is because there's pure good and there's pure evil, and it's clear cut where humanity, it's where the wizards, but where we stand. No kid reads Harry Potter and then says, ooh, I wish I was, on the side of Slytherin. No kid. And yet, for some reason, when we see pure evil in front of us, the leaders of universities in this country are unable to say that it's pure evil. And it's, again, it doesn't feel like 2023. It feels like 1933. It feels like they're waiting for a Jewish student to be murdered on campus so that they can then denounce it. And I've had enough. I'm not willing to wait for that. I want to be proactive rather than reactive here. That's why we're all here, and I hope we don't stop fighting for this.
You're here.
Shai. And that's why we are all here. Jonathan, I know you have some prepared remarks, so I'm going to invite our other panelists to turn off our cameras for the moment, and then we'll turn to Q&A after you've finished. Does that sound good to you?
Sure. I'm going to try to be very brief, and I'm not going to read my remarks, but just speak generally to the issues. So I think it's clear that we are here today at a time, and what Shai just said is right. If this feels like 2000 and not 2023, but 1933, that's because statistically, that's where we seem to be. 2022 was the highest number of anti-Semitic incidents ADL has ever tracked in almost 45 years. And last year was about 500% plus more anti-Jewish acts of harassment, vandalism, and violence than we had seen in a decade. And in that environment of elevated anti-Semitism, October 7th happened. And the numbers have skyrocketed almost 400% since the massacre. And we've seen assaults in broad daylight. We've seen synagogues desecrated. We've seen cemeteries set on fire. We've actually seen not just, Jewish businesses vandalized, like kosher restaurants and kosher supermarkets, although that would be enough. We've seen quote unquote Zionist businesses vandalized, like a cafe in Montauk that happens to be owned by Jews, or a restaurant in San Francisco or a bakery that happens to be owned by Jews, and many stories like this. And then, of course, the harassment on our college campuses is through the roof. I mean, not just the physical harassment. Many of you may have seen the students at Harvard University yesterday who were observably Jewish, meaning they had kippahs on, and they were being confronted and assaulted, intimidated and molested by quote unquote pro-Palestinian students. Many of you saw what happened at the Cooper Union, where again, visibly Jewish students were barricaded for their own safety by the campus police in a locked room, and the mob outside banged on the windows and yelled, "Globalize the Intifada." Many of you probably heard about the student's dorm that was set on fire at Drexel. Many of you are probably aware of the death threats targeting Jewish students at Cornell University. Many of you are probably aware of the student's op-ed that got cut from the Yale Daily News without any explanation. I mean, I could go on and on and on with these stories. And so then the question becomes, well, why is this happening? I mean, I think the pro-Hamas movement on our campus is so revolting. It's, look, I think groups like Students for Justice in Palestine, which celebrate, which elevate the murderers who massacred Jewish babies and infants, these people deserve nothing but our contempt. And when they express support for acts of terror, when they enable their message to travel, we think they're in violation of the law. The US Code prohibits citizens and individuals from providing material support for terror organizations. And so when they, parrot the Hamas line, when they support these individuals, this terror group, I think they're breaking the law, which is why ADL and the Brandeis Center for Human Rights wrote a letter last week to 200 university presidents telling them that they need to open up investigations of their chapters of Students for Justice in Palestine. That's why we did it. We are going to keep doing it. And I think even beyond that, the co-opting of much of the quote progressive left has been just astonishing. These groups that we marched with, that we've supported, and by the way, we'll continue to support where it makes sense. But to see like some of these Black Lives Matter chapters totally overrun by anti-Semitism and hatred, it's despicable. And so we'll call it out, and we'll keep calling it out. We're not going to stop calling it out, because we are going to try to change the narrative and make clear what we know to be true, that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And we're going to make sure that everybody understands that, because I don't need to even make the argument anymore. This is the absolute reality. So we're taking action at the universities, working with Hillel, working with Chabad on campus, working with AEPI, and we will continue to do that, helping prepare our students, helping strengthen our institutions, and helping to call out the hateful groups like SJP or Jewish Voices for Peace. And maybe some people on the Zoom today who may be involved with Jewish Voices for Peace, may have family members involved with Jewish Voices for Peace. Jewish Voices for Peace is an anti-Zionist organization, and anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, plain and simple. Can Jewish people, express anti-Semitism? You better believe it. Just like just being of a person of color doesn't exempt you from necessarily being racist or having prejudiced feelings yourself. So we think that's a huge problem. Off campus, and by the way, we should talk not just what ADL is doing, calling out the media, whether it's MSNBC or CNN or the New York Times or whomever, calling out the campuses, universities large and small. Yes, ADL still working with ZBT as well as AEPI. Whether it's, working with businesses, we think businesses have a role to play too, which is why we've launched the Workplace Pledge to make it easy for companies to stand with their Jewish students. And how do you stand with your Jewish employees? We now have over 100 companies: Google, Accenture, Omnicom, J.Crew, Madewell, I'm missing Apollo, New York Life, dozens and dozens and dozens of companies in the pledge that we want to make sure that if you have a DEI training at a company, you include anti-Semitism, and an anti-Semitism based on the IRA definition. Same thing, by the way, for universities, as we've proposed to Penn, and now Penn is doing. Secondly, if you have Jewish employee resource groups, you should cover those as well. Thirdly, you should make sure if your Jewish employees need religious accommodations, you offer them. None of this is very hard. But so what I would say to you, if you're watching this now and you want to know what ADL is doing with companies, with universities, with politicians, with the media, with big tech, we're working all of those angles. and of course are centered on extremisms, tracking the threats, monitoring the extremists, and trying to save lives. But if you want to know what you can do, if you're a donor, like I said before, close the checkbook if your alma mater isn't supporting Jewish students. If you're an employee or a manager or CEO, and what can you do? Join the Workplace Pledge or push your company to do that. If you're a voter, you want to know who to support, look at their policies and see what they're saying or not saying in this moment. And vote. Vote the way, don't vote right or blue, red or blue. Don't vote right or left. Vote right versus wrong. So these are, and by the way, if you can't do any of those things, follow ADL on social media, follow other great organizations on social media. You can post, you can like, you can retweet, etc. And finally, you know, like you can give money, and don't give to ADL. Give to the organizations in Israel that are fighting to save lives today. Give to the hospitals, give to the medical clinics that are saving Israeli Jewish lives and Israeli Arab lives. Give to those organizations doing amazing work to support the community in need. I'm sure my fundraising people are going to go crazy. I said, don't give to ADL. But my point is that in this emergency, like if you want to fight anti-Semitism at home, you can support us. But if you want to help people in Israel, there's amazing organizations. They're listed on our website. Go find them, work with them, because God bless, we need them. We really do. Okay, I'm sorry I talk so much, Deb, but I hope that sets us up for a good Q&A.
I think it absolutely does. Oh, there we go. I think it absolutely does. Before I bring everyone else back, I have a couple of questions that have come in for you that have seemed to be pretty thematic to what we're seeing in the chat, which, P.S., I've never seen a chat on one of these with so many questions. I mean, we have a big group today, but that's unbelievable. Jonathan, how can people respond when there are claims of free speech, that's why they allow these people to say things, is that it's free speech? Like, how do you combat those claims? What do you say to that?
Look, like the ADL is an organization that's been fighting for the First Amendment for longer than anyone on this Zoom has been alive, literally for 110 years. ADL is ferocious about fighting for freedom of expression, but freedom of expression is not the freedom to incite violence against kids. When you say Palestine will be free from the river to the sea, that isn't a call for, I don't know what you think. It's not a political slogan. That's a call for ethnic cleansing. And it's wrong. It's like telling an indigenous person from America that you believe in manifest destiny. And like, you know, I mean, it's wrong. It's hateful and it's not okay. So I think, you know, at the end of the day, I'm all for freedom of speech, but I'm not for supporting terrorism. I'm not for, by the way, like I don't believe in, I mean, it's funny, I've always said, Deb, as you know, I don't believe in safe spaces on campuses. Give me a break, it's college. You need brave spaces where everyone can have hard conversations. And by the way, hate speech, folks, hear me crystal clear. Hate speech is the price of free speech. Speech you detest, speech you deeply disagree with. We need it in a democracy. We just do. But you know what? That's different than demonizing people, dehumanizing people, and saying it's okay to slit their throats, or to burn their dorm rooms, or to rape their women, or to murder their babies, and so on and so forth. So let's just acknowledge that you have freedom of speech, but you don't have the freedom to slander. You have the freedom to express an idea. You don't have the freedom to assault people. And so that's where we draw the line.
I mean, it's obviously a very important distinction. Thank you for that. That was very direct and to the point, and also rather eloquent, if I may say so. Thank you. I'll also let folks know that a variety of resources are available on our website. I know that the Stand With Israel page has been dropped into the chat, and the regular ADL website as well, that can help you talk about things like what to say when people talk about Israel as an apartheid state, what to say when people talk about genocide, you know, what to say, like Jonathan just articulated for us, when people ask about, well, what about freedom of speech? So I encourage you to take advantage of all of those resources, which I believe will really be helpful, and we will include in our follow-up email following this call. All right, so panelists, please come back to us. Please turn back your cameras on. All right, thank you so much. So one of the questions that I keep seeing in the chat, and that frankly, I have myself with a stepson who is now applying to college. What advice do we give these kids in how to choose a school? There's so many different things on the table right now. What are we telling them? Like, is there somewhere they shouldn't go? Is there somewhere that they definitely should? And how do parents look at, like, well, this is the university I'm giving my money to? I think it's a complicated question. But why don't we go first? Talia, let's go to you. I'd love to hear your perspective on this.
Yeah, it pains me to say this. I unfortunately think that in this day and age, you're going to find anti-Semitism and all of these things at any university. I think that's the unfortunate reality. What we can do is prepare high school students to be ready for that. The first time that I was faced with sort of anti-Semitic criticism of Israel, it came from my best friend at the time. It was 2 years ago. And I remember in that moment feeling stuck and helpless because I just didn't have the language to be able to defend myself. I didn't have the language to be able to explain why Israel was so important to me and why the things that she was saying was incorrect. So I think that, like, making sure that high school students are equipped before they get to college with the language to be able to explain themselves, to know that they're going to face these things, and just be ready for it. And also know the organizations that will be there to support them because they exist, and like ultimately they will be okay.
Thank you for that, Talia. Shai, at the risk of frightening viewers, I'm going to ask you to also please respond and do so honestly.
Yeah, that's just I might not toe the party line here, but I'm sorry. I mean, as a parent, and I assume every parent on this call feels this, you have 3 things that are extremely important for you, for your children, and they come in this specific order. Number 1 is that they are safe. Number 2 is that they're healthy. And number 3, that they're happy, right? And right now, we're at number 1. We're not at number 3, we're at number 1. We need to make sure that when you send your kid to any school, high school, college, wherever, graduate school as well, that they are safe. I agree with Talia that they need to be prepared for dealing with anti-Semitism because the beast is raising its head. But that's putting the honors and the burden on the victim. The victim should not be the one to do this. So what I suggest is when you go to campuses, you tour campuses and you look at the facilities. We have amazing facilities at Columbia. And you look at the professors and you look at the mascot and they show you where the dorms and they show you everything. I think you should also ask a simple question. What are you doing to fight anti-Semitism? Right? There are a few, or maybe not a few, there are many schools around the country that are actually taking concrete steps. Let's flood those schools with 1 million applications of our best students and reward those schools for actually taking action. And it pains me because this might affect my student population, but unless a university takes concrete action, you should reconsider where you want to send your kids there. Maybe in 3 years or 4 years, these universities will align themselves with humanity. But right now, a school that is not even able to condemn the Hamas, cannot even bring itself to condemn raping of women. And remember, it's not that they're not condemning rape. We're not condemning Jewish women raping of Jewish women. That's the difference. They, in every other way, they're humane in every other way. They realize that beheading babies is wrong, that raping is wrong, that kidnapping the elderly is wrong, unless, and this is where we caveat it, unless it involves Jewish lives. So while I think that kids should be ready and prepared to deal with anti-Semitism, and my specific advice to everyone I've been talking with is do not engage. If you can from a distance, take a picture, take a video. There are websites like stopantisemitism.org where you can upload and they will deal with it. They will find who that person is. they will make them, yes, you have free speech, but that's not freedom from accountability. But at the same time, we should not reward the institutions that, are willing to take our money, but are not willing to give anything back. So, that's my view. It's easier said than done when your oldest is 7 rather than 17. But that's the reality that we're in now. Would you send your kid to an amazing university, the University of Berlin in 1938? Even if they would have accepted you, you wouldn't have sent them there. So that's the relationship there. And, and I want people to remember, it's okay to be wrong, and we should also be forgiving. If a student shouts from the river to the sea because they don't know what that means, because it's trendy, because it makes you look cool on TikTok, we should be forgiving. But if the student again shouts it, after they have learned what it means, no more forgiveness. Because from the river to the sea is exactly the same as Germany for Germans. It sounds nice, it sounds sensical, but they know what it means and we know what it means. And this is the definition of dog whistling.
Thank you, Shai.
I can go on for on, so I'll shut up.
I also
Appreciate it.
wanted
Thank
to
you.
add,
Please,
sorry,
Talia.
just quickly, thanks. That numbers don't always tell the whole picture of what's going on campus. I know, for example, at Georgia Tech, I believe the Jewish population is probably under 5%, but we have an incredibly tight-knit, like strong but mighty community. And so I think that, any high schooler or parent who wants to know more about the Jewish community on campus from the inside, reach out to Chabad and Hillel. Like, we're happy to have students talk to you and talk to prospective students and give them like a real inside look.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Talia. Jonathan, what's your take on that? You've navigated this process before. It's a whole new world now. How do you suggest parents look at it and students look at it?
Well, I'm a father of 2 college-age kids. We're 2 kids in college, I guess. So look, we had these hard conversations when my kids were applying. And I will tell you, I don't think that Shai is exactly right, but I don't think that Shai is exactly wrong. I don't think it's like sending your kid to Berlin to University of Berlin in 1938, but I do think it might be like sending your kid to the University of Berlin in 1933, right? And the attitude on these campuses, I can't understate, and again, Shai has spoken to this. It is almost impossible to imagine how corrupted the academy is on these issues, and it's a broad problem, especially at elite universities. I'm not sure if the problem is as bad at and not to diminish any higher institutions, to be clear, but like last week, the president of Pepperdine University, which I think is the top evangelical school or Protestant school in the country, did a great session with my friend, the head of Yeshiva University, which is pretty cool. I mean, they don't have any issues there at either. I mean, obviously at either of those institutions. And I don't know if there are issues everywhere, but I just think about like the University of California, this letter, to Shai's point, the UC professors put out, like unwilling to call Hamas terrorists and basically advocating for anti-Semitism. It's inexcusable. Like, we actually need, it's funny, I'm listening to myself, we need a reformation of the academy. We need a reformation of our universities. We need a reformation of a field of scholarship that thinks anti-Zionism is permissible as a political project. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And the SJP and these kids who are pushing it are like the Hitler Youth. Sorry, I know people don't like it when I say that, but it's true. And what Shai said before is spot on. Palestine will be free from the river to the sea is Germany for Germans, here and now. So is it as bad as it was then? No. So what do you tell, but it's still bad and getting worse. So what do you tell your kids? Number one, does the university have strong Jewish institutions that will help support you? The academy is a word for higher education, Rivka. Number one, do you have Jewish institutions like a strong Chabad, a strong Hillel, a strong Jewish fraternal system? That's number one. Greek system, number one. Number two, does the university leadership have a record of standing up against anti-Semitism? So like, do they have a DEI program that includes anti-Semitism as one of the issues that gets taught during freshman orientation? Do they have a hotline or a resource center in case there's a hate crime or a bias incident? And then number three, I mean, I think social media has a lot of downsides, but one of the good sides about social media is you can read, and this is kind of Talia's point, like to get under the hood and see what's really going on. What are the students where they're saying about the mood and the attitudes on campus? So like, I'm just going to say loud and clear, the problem that I have with pulling back from all these institutions is I'm not willing to cede these institutions to the lunatics. I'm not willing to surrender these great institutions that we helped to build. We did, our community did, as graduates, as alumni, as students, as alumni, as donors, as faculty members. Like, we helped to build them. So I'm not willing to surrender them to the fringe. But in order to reclaim them, we need to reform them. And I think we got to be inside to do that. And that's why we're going at these institutions. We're going to keep the pressure on.
Thank you for
Can
that, John.
may I add just one thing? Because I completely agree,
Briefly,
Jonathan.
but we do have other questions to get
Yes.
to.
I just want to say one thing for students that are already there, or students that will be joining campuses, right? We have to start thinking about our Jewish identity. The personal is political. That means, when you go to campus, you should organize as Jewish students, run for presidents of class, vote on any referendum that the university puts out. And you mentioned Chabad and Hillel, which I greatly respect. As someone who's never found his own place in those organizations due to theistic reasons, not for anything, identity-wise, start your own clubs. You can also start a Jewish club that is non-affiliated with any theistic notion. You should start organizations that include everyone from the Haredi and modern Orthodox to the conservative to the Reform. We are being treated as a marginalized minority. We're being reminded, and we should just start acting as one. And I think the students, can make a huge difference if they congregate together and just make sure that the universities live up to their standards.
And I just love that. Like, don't complain about it, do something about it. Like the club, start your own, right? Like, bravo, I totally agree.
Thank you. I'm going to pivot a little bit. We've seen a lot of questions, and Jonathan, this has been one of your favorite talking points about media coverage and how we are seeing that and how it has been biased and how it has not been equal. And I know we've done a variety of different things to address this. So Shira, maybe you can talk a little bit about what we've done and what other folks can do.
Sure, thank you. So early on, I'm sure many of you saw Jonathan on TV talking about the refusal of certain media outlets to call Hamas terrorists, to using words like freedom fighters or militants. And we saw many examples like that in the press, in the print, on the radio, on TV. So we have a petition that's live on our Stand with ADL website, where you can sign and ask for responsible reporting, for using the right language, for calling this what it is. And we'd love for you to join us. It will be forwarded to all kinds of media outlets. We also have a similar petition about social media. We're seeing failures in content moderation, both over and under, which is leading to some really vile content, but it's also making it hard when people are going to social media for information to get good, trustworthy information. So we'll be sending that petition to various social media platforms to ask them to do better. And we also have a media watch program that we've put out together for our leaders, our volunteers, to understand what they're seeing, what they're looking at, with some sample language about writing letters to the editor or to ombudspeople of various outlets, so that you can kind of be a watch person and you can call it out in real time. So I think that's on the Stand with Israel webpage as well. And I just want to, if I can, Deb, say that the last time I got an update, over 1,000 people had already taken the action to call Congress. So please do that. They're going to vote tonight, and there's lots of other actions as well. And you'll also find on our Stand with Israel page a link to a page to do what Jonathan said, to follow up on the letter he and the Brandeis Center sent about SJP on various campuses where we're seeing kind of the worst activity, the worst rhetoric, for universities to look at whether those organizations are violating student codes of conduct or other laws. So you can reach out to your university directly. And if you don't see them on there and think they should be there, let us know. But there's still also ways to contact the Department of Education to do some of that work too.
Thank you for that, Shira. There's been such a lot going on. It's hard even to keep up. And I know that we have some new initiatives that we're trying to launch as well that are specifically aimed at serving the populations on campus. Shira, maybe that's something you can also speak to. And Jonathan, I'm sure you'll want to add on.
I'll let her start.
So we do have some. I mean, first of all, I just want to remind people that if they are experiencing or witnessing anti-Semitism anywhere on campus, at work, that they can report to ADL, adl.org/report-incident. That will go right to the region that covers your area. And I know that my amazing colleagues will be in touch and will help you. As we said earlier, there's ways to file complaints with the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Education. We do want people using their voice, the power of their voice, and writing to their elected officials, writing to their universities, watching these. We know that there's lots of groups that are growing organically, which happens in times like these, Moms Against Anti-Semitism, things like that. If you are seeing that, please share the content. That is how people are learning about these initiatives, about things that are moving very quickly in Congress, things that are happening on campus. Again, I know it sounds like something we say all the time. If you see something, say something, but we do need to know. And like Shai said, you could take a picture, let us know, file an incident report, and we will get back to you and let you know. And we are working with communities on campus. We have done some trainings for not just our leaders about writing to the media, but for Jewish fraternity and sororities to do some of that work. Sometimes it seems like those things are daunting. Why would they publish from me? They would, because you matter. And all of this is very local. And so if folks want help writing letters to the editor or op-eds in their campus newspapers or in their local newspapers, we have those skills training and we can help. The best thing now, I think, is, and it's so hard, is not to lose hope, but to look at, there's thousands of people on this call now. There are tens of thousands of people who've been taking action. The number of calls and emails that I get as somebody who works at ADL from folks on campus who are worried about their kids or worried about their own alma mater, even if they don't have kids, people are there to support, as Talia said. And I think, Shai, people do believe that we matter and are valued. So let's find those people, let's lean into those partnerships, lean into those allies, and tell them what we need.
Thank you for that, Shira. I want to be cognizant of time. And Jonathan, when we started doing Fighting Hate from Home, it was during the pandemic. And I don't know if you remember, but it was a tough time in the world. And we would always end these calls looking for a little bit of hope. So I'm going to ask you, what can we tell the folks on this call to be hopeful for? Where's the bright light?
Look, the fact of the matter is I am, bearish, if you will, in some ways, but very bullish on America. This is the greatest this country has been. Put Israel aside, this country has been the greatest gift to the Jewish people in diaspora in the past 2,000 years. I believe we are the greatest democracy in the history of humanity, and the resilience and the adaptability. And the resilience of this country is just amazing. So if there's any country that can figure it out, it's this one. I think the American Jewish community has, again, been a part of America's success for the past 200 and whatever it's been, 70 some odd years. It's more. And I am deeply optimistic about what will get done in the next 270. But none of this is going to happen unless we fight for what we have. So what I hope everyone take away from this call and feel hopeful is that there's any country that can figure out, it's this one. And if you think this is hard, like what our brothers and sisters in Israel are facing is much harder. What we need to do is roll up our sleeves and get to work. That's the task for now. That's what we need to do.
And that's certainly what we see you doing every day. And thank you for that. And thank you to all of you for being with us. I do want to let you know that we have something exciting that's coming out this Friday, we believe, and it's going to be a major announcement about helping kids on campus access legal help. We have the best partner organizations, including the Brandeis Center and law firms. So this is going to be a major initiative. We're very excited about it. We think it's going to be a really useful tool for you. So keep an eye out because that'll be coming to you soon. Otherwise, I want to thank Jonathan, you for being here and for all of your work. Shira, absolutely to you. Shai, Talia, thank you so much for being vulnerable with us and sharing with us today. And thanks to everyone here for showing up and caring and asking what you can do. I hope we see you at another Fighting Hate from Home. And until then, be well.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here. I mean, honestly, like this has been the most difficult time of my life, and I could not have made it without people's help, like just strangers supporting. So
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you.